So the question has come up, are custom flashlights worth the price? Are $500 and up flashlights actually that much better than maybe a $100 flashlight? So first off, if you're watching this video and you think there's no way that anything in the $500, $600, $700 range is going to be worth it, then I'm not going to convince you, and you should just probably turn the video off and go watch something else, preferably on my channel. Watch something else on my channel. But if you have already been thinking about getting like a $300 or $500 Rotablade or a $300 or $400 Laulima or a Citadel Arms Reaver or like a Hanko, then let me try and explain why these lights are probably worth their price. I mean, at least I certainly think they are. So the biggest thing that you notice when you get a light like this is just how it feels in hand. The cuts, the machining, the post-processing work on the metals, like how they feel, is just way above what you get with other manufacturers. But the problem with YouTube is I can't put these in your hands. So I'm actually not going to talk about that, which is really why you get these. You get them for how they feel in your hand. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some tangible things that we can see and hear, and hopefully then you can infer what I'm talking about when you hold it. So let's start off with just the threads. This is a polished titanium light. This is bronze, this Laulima Wayfinder. This is titanium as well, and this is also titanium. The reason these three look so different is because this one's polished. This one's kind of a stone-washed finish, maybe less than a stone-washed. It's raw, I think is what they call it. And this one is what Jeff Hanko calls a CamoTi. So, and it has a finish on top of that. So camo meaning that it's kind of less than a stone washed. I mean, I guess more like a bead blasted. I'm not really sure. But then on top of that, there's kind of a seal of some sort, a finish that kind of makes it look kind of glossy. So that's why these three look different. But what I want to do is I want to take a look at the threads. Let's start out with a light like this Hanko light. I'm sorry, Hanko. This is a Hank light. This is a Hank Wang light from International Outdoor. Now, this is also titanium. Actually, I'm going to take a side detour before we get to the threads. Just look at the machining for a second. The style of this light is done in such a way that can be done rapidly and cheaply. Notice that some of the cuts on here, like this swirl pattern that goes up the host, is going to be more difficult to execute than just a crisscross knurling. So there's one difference right away. Another difference is notice that this tail cap here happens to line up with the switch. And I love that about this because when I hold it, the cutout here isn't against my palm. But if I tighten this up really good, because it was actually a cord turn untightened because it was mechanically locked out, it actually doesn't line up anymore. You can see that when the button is up right here, this is actually kind of off to like 1 o'clock. And this positioning is different on every light you're going to pick up, every D4 V2. That's because there's just basically no attention to detail on that. When they make these threads here, when they thread these caps and the bodies, they're not looking to make sure that these things line up in a specific way. All right, so that's one thing. It's just the designs that we got here. Like this design, this intricate design, is much more difficult to machine than what you're seeing here, okay? But now let's look at the thread. So this is titanium, and titanium's known to have kind of a gritty thread, and that's because of the grains in the titanium metal itself are different than in steel, copper, brass, things like that. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these lights out of the way for a second. I'm going to bring in the sound recorder so I can get some really good sound right off the threads in each case. So here we go. I'm going to screw and unscrew the cap on here. Let's see if we can get this. So I'll be quiet while I do this. All right, there we go. So we got some good audio there of me screwing and unscrewing. And you can hear it's kind of gritty, and I feel that. I definitely feel it. It feels a little sandpapery when I do it. And this is definitely standard TI threads. These aren't better or worse than what you generally get in this, sub $100 flashlight world. I just want to point out that the D4 V2 is a very middle of the road version of that. I don't find it any worse than normal. Now let's take a look at, let's say, the Rotablade. This Rotablade TI polished, very polished on the outside. I find that its threads are better than the Hank Light, but still, kind of characteristically gritty. Here we go. All right, there you go. Got a good sound on that. And whatever, it probably sounded less, I'm imagining. I haven't heard it yet, but it feels dramatically less gritty to me. I still feel a little grit, but it still feels like titanium, but it feels like a well-machined titanium. Okay, so this is a cut above what we just had. Now let's take a look at, let's say, the Hanko here. So this Hanko light is also titanium, but it's so much smoother. Here we go. I mean, I can see on the view meters I'm picking up background noise. I mean, this is very quiet. Here we go. I mean, honestly, in my hand, these titanium threads feel like brass threads on a Hank light, on a D4 V2. These are some of the finest titanium threads I've ever felt in my life. They're just so smooth. I don't know how to explain it. And it's not a lube issue because I use Niogel 760G on all of these. In fact, this one had some nano oil on it, and it felt great. And just for comparison, I took the nano oil off and I put the 760G from the Niogel. So yeah, it's really hard to explain this stuff. You got to feel it. You got to feel it. But we're doing our best here with the sound. Okay. Let's take a look at one last metric that maybe I can help with. Oh, you know what? Sorry, before we get to that, one last thing. As kind of a control here, I wanted to pull out this Laulima, the Wayfinder, because it's made of bronze. And brass and bronze are very smooth metals. So let's hear the bronze on the same mic here. And I got it set to manual, so all this will be even. I bet you don't hear anything. If you do, it sounds really smooth, I'm sure. Here we go. These are the smoothest threads I have in any light. Now, Laulima makes excellent lights. The machining is amazing. I just got to imagine that if I ever took ownership of a Hanko, a Jeff Hanko light, Hanko Machine Metalworks, that the light, if I ever got one not in titanium, like a brass or a bronze, I'm sure that it would just, this is already buttery, so I don't know what's beyond buttery. So anyways, great threads on this one. Okay. And also, just not to leave it out, let's talk about the Citadel, its threads. Here we go. I'd say the threads are better than even the Rotablade, but a smidge under the Hanko. Again, Zero Air is always talking about how Hanko's got the best machining ever, and it is. It's a cut above even the Rotablade, which is a high-end light, and this Citadel. Now, the Citadel... Now Citadel, listen, we're going to go to another thing then, besides the sound. Let me show you something about the Citadel that amazes me, okay? So... this thing's threads on. This thing's is threads on. It's got these horizontal lines here. Now, when you go to close this thing up, notice how it doesn't match, right? No, that it actually does. But that's my point. Is imagine if this didn't, right? Now, I had this thing kind of like backed off a little bit, and I had it right here. So I had it like one rotation less. And the thing about that is his machining, Jesse Hayes, his machining at Reaver Arms is so impeccable that if you have your light lined up like this, Zero Air had his light lined up like this, and he took some photos of it. And Jesse saw the photo and just he was looking at this gap, this little gap here, and he said, "I bet you can go one rotation, not rotation, but one notch more." And it's true. If you muscle this, it will line up every time in the right spot. Here we go. Watch. I'll go a little bit further. It gets tight, right? Watch this. And watch, I'm really putting my muscle on it. And where it stops perfectly every time. And that thing looks solid. There's like no gap. I mean, that's machining. And so that's what you're paying for with these lights. It's just this incredible quality. And I don't know if you noticed too, to get that to close, I was kind of white knuckling it. I mean, it takes a lot of oomph, but once you get it closed, it lines up perfectly. It doesn't go past. And in fact, I've even noticed that when this light's on, it's kind of warm, the metal expands enough that I can't get it into position. So I have to do this when the light's cold. That's how exacting this is. So just another example visually of the type of quality we're talking about on these lights. And again, the visuals, the audiobles, stuff that we're hearing, that's nothing compared to holding it. When you hold it, you can feel the difference on the finish and just how high quality it is. So, yeah, I mean, if I'm putting these in order of like, you know, the machining and how I feel about how high quality they are, I feel like these lights, all four of these lights are insanely good. I put these two lights in kind of the same category. I feel this one from Jesse Hayes is just way worth the $700 that these things sell for. And then the Hanko lights, these sell for $700-800, and it's actually kind of a steal at that price. The machining is just amazing. So again, you know, I'm kind of trying to preach to the choir here. If you've already been thinking about a light in these price ranges and you're wondering, is it worth it? I say undoubtedly yes, it's definitely worth it. If you don't think it's worth it, I'm not here to convert you. I mean, it's just, I mean, you have to look at these like art pieces, and you have to look at them like something that you value the fact that this lines up. You value how smooth the threads are. You know, if you value that already, then they deliver.